All right. So there's a channel that's been popping up on my YouTube uh, feed called "The Voices of the Past." Um, I'm not sure how accurate it is. Uh, also, uh, I don't know what the credentials are, um, or how objective it may be. What it deals is with foreigners, uh, uh, written words from foreigners, I guess, who describe different cultures to uh, other places. So I've seen one on China. I just finished one on Korea. Uh, so the fact that they use the word Korea when it's actually Joseon or Jos something like that, um, or Choson or maybe a clue. But it may also be that because that's what most of the West knows it as. Um, so, anyways, that's all besides the point. The point is that it was not very flattering, and many of you who have been watching this should know that I'm Korean. Um, so it was deeply unflattering, um, and it basically made the Koreans look like a bunch of immoral, debauchery-ridden, hedonistic cowards, uh, and so on and so forth. But here's the thing. I watched the whole thing, and I'm Korean by birth. But the thing is I've watched enough and read enough about history about Korea, of China, and India, and the Middle East, and Russia, and Europe, and Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the UK, the Americas, South America, Mexico. So basically, I'm trying to be as well informed as I possibly can, so I can critically look at things. So um, now, fact is that the reality is that the Korea has had a very, very uh, uh, violent history. Uh, and that violent history is almost always from the outside. So check out the Voices of the Past about Korea, and I think you'll understand where I'm coming from. And the thing I do know, like back in 1990s, I had actually joined the U.S. Air Force. I had gone through basic training. I was actually in Aberdeen, proving grounds, uh, doing my God, I can't think of the term that they use, but basically, it was training for a particular thing. So there was a sergeant that was running one of the courses I was I was taking, and that sergeant had been actually stationed in Korea. And I remember, I don't, I think he was talking about, not sure exactly sure, but he was talking about how about Korea, and we ended up getting into a conversation about the misogynistic nature of Korean society, and but that's something that's was common in Japanese society. It's definitely common in Western society, with some with some greater distinguishing factors for those who in Western societies who have uh, uh, who have power and wealth. Um, but altogether, there wasn't really a significant difference. The misogyny was baked in. So the point is that Korea has, I think, with the possible exception, and this is something that I haven't been able to nail down and confirm, but there was a period where it looks like there may have been a period where the Koreans were actually more aggressive and expansionist. Uh, it's like and the connection I seem to get is Manchuria. Uh, so I think there may have been a period where the Koreans were as aggressive as others, and I don't know. It may have been it may have been the Chinese who had started it because Korea was part of Manchuria one time, um, or the Koreans that had actually uh, accomplished building up Manchuria, uh, and then the Chinese ended up. Then the Chinese influence had gotten in and basically. But that's all besides the point. The point is that outside of possibly one example of where the Koreans were aggressive in and expansionary, uh, that was basically the only time. Otherwise, the Korean Peninsula has been basically uh, a invasion point and oppression point for the Japanese, the Chinese, the Europeans, the Russians, uh, uh, the Mongolians. It just uh, basically Korea has been a shit show, including by as I said, the Europeans and the United States and Russia. It just uh, but that but if you watch the Voices of the Past, uh, it kind of gives you, if it's to be believed, and unfortunately, the reality is is that there seems to be some credence, and I know from having been born in Korea and until I was about five when I was put into an adoption, that that the that what we call morals and ethics and everything else, and the way things were done, well, it may be understandable that why Korea suffered has suffered the way it did. It was a cultural, societal system bent on basically making the wealthier class prone to be lazy, uh, uh, lazy, cowardly, very uh, self, what you call it? Well, whatever the case may be, they did a lot of. There was a lot of, and that, as we know, societally, we have this. We have this. I don't know, yearning to believe that people who have wealth and power somehow it's a I think it's a completely fucked up way to look at it, but involves with with spreading ignorance and looking towards leadership, which we should all aspire to be communal leaders. Anyways, the point is this is I always talk about critically thinking, and while I'm not ashamed of being Korean, I do think in critical terms to understand that it takes us collectively to build a fucked up system, a fucked up way of looking at things, to allow the vast majority of us to be held in oppression of metaphorical bondage. One of the things that I learned early on is that male dominated societies is a horrible way to is a horrible way to build a society. And I have a outlook of that. I don't like, want, or need a society where women are other or subhuman. I don't like them to be viewed as being objects to have immediate sexual desires, and so on and so forth. And the reason for that is because I equate the harms I have been subject to as equal to that of what women have gone through, because I don't like it. I didn't appreciate it. I hated it. And so if I am to be moral, if I'm supposed to be fair, I can't view the horrors that are done and the way the society has been engineered against women to be fair or moral or equitable or anything like that. And so I get angry. I know what molestation is because I've experienced it, and I don't And I hate it. And I hate it when it's done to a woman because, or a girl, because I view them as not being subhuman, as not being unequal, as them being the harm that's done to them. I feel empathy for it because I don't want it done to myself or anybody else. Which is the reason why I find it vile when somebody who has black skin or Hispanic or they'd be Irish or Chinese or whatever, when that sort of stuff is done to them, I don't care because I don't see a difference. I don't want somebody coming up to me for no reason and hitting me. I don't want somebody coming up to for no reason and telling me that because of the way I look, I get angry and that's the issue, is that is harm as well. And it's a self-inflicted harm by a society built with all this stupid nonsense. This is what causes division. This is what causes this idolatry of those who have basically committed crimes to be where they are in the economic and social and political ladder. So this is something I constantly talk about. And this is how I see critical thinking. I'm not saying that you should view the voices of the past and look down upon Koreans. No. That's not the point. The point is that we need to have a better critical understanding that we must aspire to throw off our superstitions, throw off our idiotic ideas, which oftentimes come from those who have who are higher, who have this illusion of social hierarchy from the upper hierarchy. We have to throw it off. We have to think for ourselves. We have to understand that thinking critically is self-defense. That educating ourselves in reality is self-defense. It is understanding. I'm not trying to vilify or vitrify Koreans. What I'm saying is we have a commonality and an integration. And we must all aspire to be the better that we can collectively, so that we can see truth and we can aspire for greater truth. And that when we do otherwise, we get what we get. We get this partisanship. We get this racism. We get this misogyny. We get this hedonism. We get this idolatry of wanting of basically elevating the inconsequential, the immoral. We get the bankruptcy of morality and everything else. We start to see everything as a way to aspire to an existence, which is not a life. I made a video about that. There is existence and there is life. Life is about aspiring to throw away existence and be more wise, more critical, more introspective, more collective, and understanding the interconnectivities of wanting to do the work that is mental, emotional, and physical, and bringing that together into a spiritualism that we grow and we leave and cast off all of the stupidity and nonsense which keeps us bound and destructive. So, anyways, I may not have done this very well, but the whole point is that living in ignorance of living in idolatry and worship, almost like worship of those who have basically committed crimes to achieve the societal elevation, and having envy and wanting to emulate is a pathway to nowhere. It's not aspiration. It's we're putting chains on ourselves. So, anyways, I should also give a shout out to some news or some more news. It's with Cody. He's a channel that I watch, and sometimes I get irritated because he gets he tries to be comically clever, but he does speak on a lot of the stuff that I do. He just does it in a more sarcastic and more comic driven way, and that's something I find to be the opposite of what a lot of people who do that sort of stuff and how they say that comedy often and the thing is we don't need comedy because it's a tragedy. What we need is to be informed. What we need is passionate anger that is balanced to understand how we have created the monster that we now some of us are starting to understand is the crux of what is wrong. It's the same reason why I vilify and vitrify religions. It's this idea that we need some sort of leadership and example, when all we have to do is inform ourselves, which is what I constantly do. That's the work I do. I need my need for a deeper understanding so I can have critical thought and spiritual balance that brings forth my understanding and why I share what I share. Oh, and funny thing, some more news with Cody. It was funny. I was watching. He had a clip in there with Trump doing a press briefing, and I don't know. I forget. I didn't see what channel was the clip from, but he Trump was talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, and he made a very odd way to phrase. Uh, it's at right. It's shortly after he talks about April in another clip, and then or in the same clip for his aspirations for bringing back people to work. But he said the virus will disappear, and then he goes on to say, like America, the virus will disappear. Now, I was like, what? So you gotta, yeah, I was like thinking, what the hell was he thinking when he said that? The virus will disappear, like America, the virus will disappear. I'm like, huh? What the hell was going through his mind? So that was just a funny thing I caught. Um, so check out Cody with some more news, and as I said, I think uh, Cody has a more critical way of looking at things than a lot of people. But anyways, it's up to you. I say check him out, and but that's it. Thanks for your time.